Oh, Silent Bob. Did you notice that there's a lingering shot of some polar bears in the Man of Steel movie? Polar bears are the fiercest predators in the animal kingdom. Word. Wham! What I ask myself after every movie, after when I leave the theater, is this movie the best that it could have possibly been for the given cast, for the given director, for the given budget, within this sort of circumstances that this movie had, was it the best it can possibly be? With Man of Steel, I think we're up at 70% because I think the direction was perfect. Zack Snyder brought his A game. I don't think anybody can say anything bad about Zack Snyder. The cast did the best that they could do with the material that they had. Hans Zimmer composed the most beautiful soundtrack possible for this movie. It's a shame about the script. David Goyer and Christopher Nolan go in a room somewhere and they blow each other intellectually, and then they come up with this epic stuff that just doesn't go well with common sense. What happens is that people write themselves into a corner, and the only way to get out of it is by having characters act in dumb ways and making stupid decisions. Yes, that is something that Man of Steel is guilty of, but all that being said, Superman is pretty badass in this movie. He is not a Boy Scout. Even when he's not Superman yet, we see how frustrating it is for Clark to restrain himself. There is this one scene where a guy pours a pitcher of beer on Clark's head, and you see the look in Clark's eyes, and all the audience goes, "What? That was not a good idea, dude." But then Clark, of course, restrains himself. And when he goes into his Superman persona, Superman don't take no shit from nobody. When he deals with the government, he's like, "You can't control me, so don't even try." Not because I'm a bad guy, but because there's just no point in trying to control me. And you can just tell that this is going to be the thing that is really going to tick off Bruce Wayne and Lex Luthor when they eventually show up in this universe. The best part of the first half of this movie, for me, is seeing Clark transition from somebody who has to restrain himself and hide himself to somebody who is learning about himself, and then to somebody who is in complete control of himself. I did not have a problem with the pacing because I thought the flashbacks were restricted but well used. Quite frankly, I didn't need to see Clark young again, okay? I've seen 10 seasons of Smallville. I don't need to be in freaking Smallville anymore. I just want to see Clark get down to business. And when Clark gets down to business, the action scenes I really liked. I, unlike other people, did not find them repetitive. I did notice a lack of hand-to-hand combat and of practical effects. Of course, it is all CGI, but I do not have a problem with the CGI itself. What I have a problem is that when you see an all CGI Superman fight, it's very hard to reconcile the fact that this is the same Superman, and this is the same actor, and this is the same character that you see when he's just hanging around talking bullshit to people. It's the same problem that I had with the Spider-Man movies. It was very hard for me to reconcile the fact that Tobey Maguire's mopey Peter Parker is the same guy that is fighting Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2. Not a problem that I have with the Batman movies because Nolan uses a lot of practical effects, fight choreography, and I have no problem believing that Christian Bale's Bruce Wayne is the same guy who's in the Batman suit. So if there's anything for me to criticize about the action scenes, is that I wish they could have had more hand-to-hand combat. I wish they could have done more practical stuff with Henry Cavill, because then it would have been easier for me to believe that his Clark Kent / Superman is the same Superman who is fighting supervillains all over Metropolis and Smallville. What I find interesting is that they changed the Lois Clark dynamics so much. They basically did away with the entire Lois Clark Superman romantic triangle, which is basically what has kept Lois busy for the past 75 years. But this opens her up to new possibilities. I don't know how they're going to take it from here, since Lois no longer has to choose between Clark Kent and Superman. She's on board with the whole thing from the get-go. But I think it's great that Clark no longer has to get the girl. Now they can actually focus on making their relationship work and not having Clark chase Lois or Lois chase Superman. While I didn't particularly care for the heavy messianic metaphors, I did like the emphasis placed on evolution. Fiora herself said at some point that, evolution always wins. And she's right. She's right. That's what this movie is all about. Jor-El is a hardcore Darwinist. He didn't care so much about the survival of his species as much as about the evolution of his species. Does that make him a morally right character? Not really. But Zod is not morally right either. We're supposed to believe that he's all evil. I don't think he's all evil. I just think that he's a person that's stuck in a particular evolutionary state where he cannot break out of it. He cannot adapt. He cannot change. He's like a machine that cannot break his own programming. And that's why ultimately he fails. And even Superman is not some kind of moral absolute, because at some point he goes, Krypton had his chance. And I'm like, dude, whoa, that's harsh. There are no moral absolutes. Zod is not entirely evil, and Superman is not entirely good. And that's why I personally do not have a problem with the way that this movie ended. The only absolute is evolution, is change, and if you don't change and if you don't evolve, you die. And yeah, life is precious, truth, justice, the American way, blah, 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 blah. Now, let's talk about the critics. I think that Man of Steel, all in all, has just as much humor, just as much emotion, and is just as convoluted as all the major superhero franchises that came before it. What that means is that what critics don't like about Man of Steel, in my own personal theory, is the same shit that has pissed them off since the first X-Men movie came out in like 2000 or something. Is Man of Steel guilty of being sometimes dumbed down or convoluted? Yes. But so is like every superhero franchise ever. Is it stupid to walk into a tornado to save a dog? Yes, it is. But it's not more stupid than Ben Parker's death scene in The Amazing Spider-Man. Is it morally reprehensible for Superman to kill somebody in cold blood? Yes, it is. But not more so than Batman killing Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight. Is creating a black hole to magically teleport all the Kryptonians away convenient? Yes, it is, but not more convenient than completely shutting down a Chitauri army like it happened in Avengers when Iron Man blew up that command ship. And don't get me started about dropping a fucking star in the Hudson River in Spider-Man 2. Man of Steel is guilty of a lot of things, but it's not more guilty than all these other movies that have all gotten better reviews. So what this means is that critics are obviously not cutting Superman some slack. Why are we getting on Man of Steel's case so much, okay? Is it because critics didn't give a shit before? Or they simply recognize the entertainment value is more important than all this crap? Do they generally think that for Superman it would be different? And why? Because it has the same creative team like the Batman movies? Or free, and my personal favorite, is that critics pretty much knew that Man of Steel was going to be successful no matter what they do, so they figured that for once, they would be completely honest about what they think about superhero movies. I think we need to ask ourselves these things because Superman has evolved, but the superhero movie hasn't. I'm seeing the same problems that I saw in the first X-Men movie or the first Spider-Man movie or Batman Begins. Okay, the superhero movie is not evolving. They're stuck in these cliches, these tropes, partly because we allow them to be. Again, I don't think The Man of Steel deserves to be at 56% on Rotten Tomatoes if all these other movies that I've mentioned in this review have better scores, okay? I don't think that's fair. But at the same time, I think that we do need to evolve. We do need to insert some common sense in this shit, okay? There's comic book logic, there's movie logic, and then there's real logic, I guess. And we need to mesh them better, is all that I'm saying. Pew 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 pew.